Before I get started on this episode, I just wanted to let you guys know that content over on the Golden State with Mates Patreon is now available to absolutely everyone through the first 2 weeks of January. So if you enjoy tuning into our podcast episodes or want to get the latest Warriors news and information through my daily Warriors newsletter, then go check it out. That'd be fantastic. I'll leave a link in the description. Coming up on this episode, Stevie Ray joins me to discuss all the latest in regard to Jonathan Kuminga and Warriors trade rumors. We talk through Anthony Davis, Trey Murphy III, Michael Porter Jr., essentially a bunch of names we could possibly think of that might be part of a Jonathan Kuminga deal and who the Warriors could acquire. Let's jump into it. Alrighty, things are heating up across the league. We have got now less than a month until the February 5 trade deadline. And we've got 8 or 9 days until Jonathan Kuminga is officially trade eligible. We're all counting down the days to that. Stevie, I know you've got plenty of thoughts and opinion to share on this episode. So where do you want to start? You let me know.
I actually want to take a little detour over to OKC and just look at their recent demise with their losses collecting up for about 3 weeks. Prior to the last 10 days, we'd been hearing that this might be the best team that's ever been assembled. This team might be the one that breaks the Warriors record and so forth. And we've seen that with Hartenstein down and then with Jay Will down, what the lack of a front court can do to even a team that is so deep at the wing and guard position. I think it also says one thing, that so many people were picking OKC over the field. I don't think that's the same bet in Vegas as it was prior. I know you're already eager to make a trade as I am. Do you think that it should shift the populace's position on what the Warriors should do, seeing now that maybe the juggernaut that we had thought was there in the West maybe isn't as overwhelming favorite as we expected going into the trade deadline?
Yeah, I think it should. I actually think even when the Thunder at full strength, I think Golden State actually match up fairly well with the Thunder and have over the last couple of seasons. And so, the short answer to that is yes. I think if you can go into a series with Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, some kind of legitimate third scoring option that is far greater and more consistent than what the Warriors have right now. Maybe Draymond is still part of the team, obviously, or is expected to be still part of the team, with the Warriors not necessarily changing their stance on wanting to keep him around. So if you can go in with that kind of core, I think that can be dangerous against any team, and I include the Oklahoma City Thunder in that mix. The other thing I want to mention about in terms of the Western Conference right now is with the Nikola Jokic injury, it seems like the San Antonio Spurs are probably the team that will most likely end up as the second seed. And the Warriors right now, I don't think anyone would suggest they are. I think if they make a decent trade, they are capable of pushing up into the top 6. But right now, if you're a neutral analyst, I think the top 6 in the West is probably set. And can the Warriors get to 7th over the Suns? Absolutely. So that almost makes a potential 2v7 matchup again for the Warriors, like they had with the Houston Rockets last season. And if you're looking at the top 6, the Spurs, they kind of feel like the Rockets last season to me, where they're this young, incredibly talented team that has spiked up the standings rather quickly. But are they a team you're probably wanting to see in the playoffs over some of these other teams? I would say yes, just because of the lack of experience and the lack of playoff experience among that young team. So, again, that's another reason why I'm looking around, and even a team like the Spurs, who could solidify themselves as the 2 seed, I think the Warriors would give themselves a genuine chance in that kind of first round matchup if that was how it out. I don't know if you've got similar thoughts to that, though.
I think just getting into that 6th seed is going to be, it's essential. Yeah, there's no world where the Warriors fight in from the play-in and get to the finals. There's basically like a 0% chance with Curry and Butler needing to be healthy in order to win any 7-game series. I think that the front court rotation we see, I brought it up back in the off season, but just for anyone who didn't hear that discussion, um, I believe it was the 23 season with the Memphis Grizzlies and Adams went out. And everyone was like, Memphis obviously isn't that good if they lose Adams and they just fall apart. But they had already lost Clark. And then Triple J was the only big. And they didn't have a front court rotation. And the team went from one of the most devastating teams in basketball to a team that was losing to sub 500 teams twice a week. And I think that because it's difficult to calculate, difficult to measure the symptomatic effects of not having a real front court rotation, not just a starter or a closer, but having constant rim protection and pressure on the rim, what it does to your guards and wings, especially a team that's starting and closing guys under 6'5" at the 1, 2, 3, and sometimes the 4. I think that once we get some size, only then will we see how much we're leaking oil by going small with Draymond at the 5, or like Trace Jackson Davis is supposed to be like a third or fourth big. But right now he's kind of our backup center because Draymond doesn't want to play the center, but isn't offensively capable of playing the 4. And so I think when we're going into the trade deadline, like we have to find a starting 7-footer, 6'10", the size is not important. It's someone who can, on both sides, strike some fear and deterrence at the rim, and also some vertical spacing where right now it feels like as an opponent, I never have to particularly worry about someone inside punishing me, even if I don't put anybody inside there. If Post or Trace Jackson Davis want to pick up an easy 6 points in a third quarter, so be it. But we don't have a player that's just going to go on a run despite the scheme pressing out to the perimeter.
Yeah. So does that mean, from what you're saying to me there, is your opinion that this team needs a center, and what you just described there, more so than a wing forward type? Because I think the two, probably in terms of juicing up the offense, which currently ranks 20th in the league right now, and again was quite anemic in yesterday's loss to the Clippers. Two of the primary trade targets right now, I suppose, are Michael Porter Jr. and Trey Murphy III. But if you're Mike Dunleavy Jr. in the front office, are you angling towards more of a center option to deliver that two-way interior impact that you just discussed?
Well, me and you have been going back and forth about Davis since it's the newest thing to be in the trade discussions. He kind of kills two birds with one stone, despite not really shooting the three ball at all this season or last season. It's difficult because in the 30 minutes prior to the pod, I'm watching the Sacramento game, and unfortunately, the reason Davis is available, if this fact wasn't there, there's always the injury factor, fine. But set that aside for 1 second. His motor's just not the same as when he's playing Houston against Durant and when he's playing Sacramento. And we've dealt with this with Wiggins for the last handful of years since the title. Having a guy like Curry at his age, you would hope that the rest of the role players or co-stars are willing to carry the load throughout regular season games against exactly teams like Sacramento. But if you put this version of Davis that I was just watching prior, now hopefully he's making me eat crow, and in the second half he's just murdering them. But in the first half, 3 turnovers, he's got enough points and he's killing the boards. Yeah, just dominating the boards. That's a place he never sleeps, but he's not running back on defense. He's not running the floor. He looks like he needs a carrot like Kevin Durant out there in order to somehow juice and oil the motor of him being willing to come out and play a regular season game. And I understand at 34 and that big, like, he's had a difficult career, especially in his mentality, somebody who thinks he should be playing the 4, even though he might be the best 5 of our generation outside of Jokic. It's a difficult one to choose, but the boards, man, against the Rockets, I'm going to set aside the Sacramento game and just put it that he's just not up for it. It's hard to get up for Sacramento. But the way that he leans his large shoulders into, it doesn't matter who it is. Yeah, whether it was Capella or Durant, he was just able to easily force people out of his way and just control the glass on both ends of the floor. Something that like he takes for granted and the Warriors just can't do with any of their players, whether they're playing big or small. It's something that might change the dynamics of the way that our entire offensive defense functions. But last thing, it seems though that his offense is predicated on tough shot making in the 2-point range, which would be fantastic when it's on. Wasn't so much on in the last 20 minutes that I was watching against Sacramento. I don't know what your thoughts are of what you saw from that Rockets game. I don't know if you caught any of the game that's currently going on at the moment.
Well, I think if you were to put him in the Warrior offense, now I know a lot of players have come into the Warrior offense and, read and react style and how Steve Kerr runs the machine. I know a lot of players have come in and struggled, but you would like to think that a big man like him playing alongside Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler is probably going to be a little bit easier for him in terms of generating shots and good looks than what he's currently getting with rookies in Ryan Nembhard and Cooper Flagg, right? As talented as those guys are, as good as Cooper Flagg is, like it's a different kettle of fish when we're talking about Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, the gravity of Steph, the facilitating of Jimmy. I want to give you some credit because you on this podcast have been very heavy on the idea of trading Draymond Green for quite some time at a time where a lot of fans were just thinking, what the hell are you on about? Like, shut up, basically. And now it's come around to that night where AD had 26, 12, and 5 blocks, and then the Warriors outscored the Jazz by like 21 in the second half when after Draymond got ejected. That was it was like one of those nights I like forever remember in Warrior Twitter history, because I'm just scrolling through and just the amount of people that are like, yes, I would trade Draymond Green right now for Anthony Davis. And like, it was a really big thing on social media. Now, that doesn't mean whatsoever that Mike Dunleavy Jr. and the front office are going to change their stance on Draymond, which by all the reports, they want to keep him. But I've said it before and I'll say it again, the idea of Anthony Davis has to at least intrigue fans, even if you are against it, because of everything you just described in terms of having a two-way big man who can, again, take advantage of the gravity of Steph and the playmaking of Jimmy and also be a legitimate rim protector. Like, Draymond, watching Draymond go up against Zoo yesterday, he was battling him. Like, he was playing hard. He was being really physical. He was doing all he possibly can. And yet the Clippers are still kind of feeding the matchup because they know it's just such a size mismatch. And if you just had Anthony Davis in that spot instead, like, it's just a clear talent upgrade. It's nothing against Draymond. It's just a clear talent upgrade. And so, depending on what the pick situation would have to be, if it was, again, I mentioned this the other day, if it was only a pick or it's a pick and maybe one that's heavily protected or a pick swap or something like that, and it's, obviously the contracts of JK, Draymond, and Buddy Hield, I just don't know how, if you were Steph Curry and the Warrior front office, I don't know how you could look at that and say, no, we would prefer to keep Draymond over Anthony Davis. Like,
Yeah,
it's very intriguing to me. It has to be.
and honestly, when I went into the Rockets game to watch it from start to finish, I went in originally with the plans to text you and then go on this pod and go, Anthony, I expected to see the Sacramento version. Yeah. I expected to see nice highlights, but a lack of motor. And it was the exact opposite. Everybody talks about rim protection and they talk about these one-on-one battles with the bigs. Can't trade Draymond. You saw what he did against Wembanyama or the playoffs with the Rockets against Şengün. Rim protection isn't the 4 to 5 one-on-one mano-a-mano post-ups. That doesn't fucking matter.
Mm.
That's not what, those are 2-point shots. Yeah, they're the same as what rim protection is deterring people from going to the rim. Nobody is afraid of going to Draymond, especially since anybody, I'm sure of it, anyone who is afraid of trading Draymond Green has not really watched this season. So every single time somebody scores against the Warriors for the last 10 games, I watch the score, then I press the 10-second button bet. Whose fault is it? And if you start doing this, you will see how many times, especially in the first half, Draymond just evacuates that position, allowing the player to go to it, making not the business decision like he's going to get spiked on. He just knows, I don't think that I can make a good enough contest where it looks good or I can actually stop him. And he literally leaves the restricted circle and allows
Yeah.
a red carpet 2-point dunk. In the exact opposite, when I'm watching this Rockets game, there were guys going to the basket and then going, yeah, I don't think I want to go there. Because when they
Mm.
did, Davis was just, it didn't matter who it was. Didn't matter if it was Durant. It didn't matter if it was Amen. There is a level of fear and panic when you see somebody like that. And Draymond used to impose this will in his prime, and he hasn't for a long time. Draymond doesn't get guarded on the offensive end. Yeah, I'm as close to right now in Indonesia as the closest defender on the court to Draymond Green when he's out on the perimeter. They were double teaming Anthony Davis 18 feet from the basket constantly from the beginning of the game. Because, well, first of all, like you said, they don't have a squad. Yeah. But second of all, if you don't bring the double, this 18-footer is like a 8-footer with his skill level of how much touch he has. He's one of the few 2-point jump shooters that he kind of breaks the analytics. Maybe the 3 isn't better with the 2 with him because he looks like a Patrick Ewing, David Robinson type of touch shot. So, like you said, the level of upgrade is just overwhelming.
I think the great thing about the Davis move is like, okay, he's not really shooting threes at a rate or an efficiency that he, used to going way back, 4 or 5 years ago, kind of bubble AD, that kind of era. But that doesn't really matter because, like, yes, you're going to have some spacing concerns a little bit with him and Jimmy, but it's also like, well, you've got that anyway with Draymond and Jimmy, so it doesn't really make a difference there. If you had to identify, like, I think the 3, tell me if there's another piece that you want to throw into this, but the 3 trades to me are AD, MPJ, and Trey Murphy. They are the 3 trades that are kind of semi-realistic right now with under a month until the deadline that would make enough of a difference where the Warriors could therefore see themselves as a puncher's chance against anyone in the playoffs. Is there another name out there that is impactful enough that you think the Warriors should explore that would actually give them a legit shot against a team like OKC or any other team, obviously, in the league?
Well, I would just add a caveat to the Nets trade. I brought it up at the end of the last podcast, but I don't know how many messages I've sent you or Athletic Alchemy going back and forth about the Claxton MPJ trade. But if Draymond doesn't go out in a trade and he continues to be the small ball 5 in fourth quarters, the Warriors have a 0% chance of winning the title. So, like, we have been constantly calling the Warriors a top 5 defense due to points allowed. Due to, according to ranking.com, which updates after every single game, the Warriors are currently 7th in a points allowed, but they are 5th in first half. They are 13th in second half. And fourth quarter allowed, they're 4th from the bottom. Yeah. So in fourth quarters, they let up 28 plus points a game. What's happening different in the fourth quarter compared to the first and second quarter? We go 6'5" out of shape, out of his prime, can't score, nobody guards him center with 4 guards almost every single fourth quarter for 8 minutes. And then we expect to win. We're getting outscored. It's not an offensive problem. it both sides of the ball are connected. It's we keep isolating that we can't score. We also give up almost more points than anybody in transition because he's throwing the ball around. So Michael Porter Jr. would be a fantastic add if we're also upgrading the five with Claxton. But the idea we're going to trade Kuminga and Heald and Moses or whoever because 38 million isn't easy to get to. It's a complicated number still. It's not like Trey Murphy, which is just like easy swap. Trey Murphy, Michael Porter Jr., whichever the two, I think I would rather take Michael Porter Jr. and just not just because of the cost. I think the shot making is exceptional. Even in comparison to Trey. Trey is a better prospect and long-term fit for sure. But without Claxton, if you just plug one of those guys in, I don't think it's a big enough upgrade. I think it's nice, but if your plan is to just plug in Michael Porter Jr. and keep Draymond at the five, that's a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting point because I was listening to the Warriors. I don't know if you've listened to it yet, but I was listening to the Warriors Plus Minus podcast, and Kawakami was mentioning Draymond and his kind of position, and basically mentioned that Draymond's a center now, and that he's probably going to spend 50% of time as a center, and then the other 50% is going to be made up of Quentin Post, Al Horford, and Trace Jackson Davis. And I was at the gym listening to it, and I was about to throw like dumbbells around. I was getting very angry just listening to Kawakami go on about how Draymond's a center now. I'm like, are you serious, man? He's like, I suppose he's not wrong in the way that the Warriors probably view him in a very similar way. But I was like, come on, like, and this is the problem is that there's too many limitations with Draymond now. Where is the upside worth it in terms of his chemistry with Steph? And also there is no doubt there is an element here of sentimental factor with him and his history with the franchise. But at some point, like, Clay's already left. I think this is a different story if Clay's still on the team, but Clay's already left at some point, and like, I think Steph's got a big say in this because Steph's the guy who's played with Draymond for, Draymond's whole career, obviously, who's so close to the guy, who is not, he's, mates with the guy. He's not going to want to go and necessarily go to the front office and say, hey, we should look at trading this guy. But at some point, Steph's got to look at the numbers as well. And I'm not saying he should be actively saying trade Draymond, but if Mike Dunleavy says, hey, we can actually get Anthony Davis right now, like, is Steph really going to be pushing back against that? I just don't know how he could. It's obviously really interesting, kind of the cost of all these guys. How much draft capital would the Mavericks need for Anthony Davis? How much would the Nets need for Michael Porter Jr.? And then Murphy, I always thought Murphy would be the most expensive of the three in terms of the draft capital you would have to give up. Brett Siegel had an interesting report today for Clutch Points mentioning that the starting price for Trey Murphy III and Herb Jones, separately, I'm assuming, is starting at 2 unprotected first-round picks, which kind of pricked my ears a little bit because I was like, if the price is 2 first-round picks, and we know the Pelicans have some reported interest in Kuminga, and it's Kuminga, a low-value, small contract, and 2 first-round picks for Trey Murphy III, that to me feels like an absolutely no-brainer deal, doesn't it? And then maybe there's a guy out there using it. You could consider moving Draymond for someone else and using a couple more. I mean, the Warriors have 4 picks to use. I don't know. I feel like Draymond's in a position where you'd have to include him in a Kuminga trade with picks kind of thing, because if you're giving up picks alongside Kuminga and then doing a separate deal, it just doesn't feel like you're going to necessarily give up all the draft capital necessarily. But maybe there's like a Moses Moody deal where it's like you could get a center, I don't know, Daniel Gafford or someone like that to give you some kind of interior presence. But I don't know, do you hear the 2 first-round picks for Trey Murphy III and think that's if that's the asking price, the Warriors should probably be pulling the trigger on that?
If that were the case, then probably. I think that there's just it's very difficult when we go into hoops hype and we see these types of like posts and then we see who says it and who's it from or what the agenda is of why these numbers are attached. If I'm the Pelicans and I see Warriors unprotected 28, Warriors unprotected 232 in a swap, maybe. But
Yeah.
if it's 26 and 28, I'm maybe if Will Richard is included in that deal. But I don't think
Will
anybody in the
Richard
Pelicans
makes a
know
big
who Will
difference.
Richard is, so I don't think it matters to them. Like, it's difficult with the Pelicans though. They're similar to Sacramento and Chicago. They have kamikaze front offices that don't really know not just what they need, but what they want. It seems like their desires are schizophrenic. The Queen decision might end up being something different than anybody expected, I suppose. But why would they trade Trey Murphy is the bigger question. So, of like seeing them trying to create a mutually beneficial exchange where somehow the Pelicans end up better in the long term. How does that happen by trading a young kid who does both, like who's on a good contract, one of the best contracts in basketball despite his injury woes, who's a two-way player, can score in sky and shoot the three. But if that is the price,
Mm.
for sure, do it. But I just can't imagine how it's not three shitty firsts or two amazing firsts and a swap. So that would
Mm.
be my assessment of the subjective math.
Yeah, because the idea of first round picks, they're not created equal, as you
Mm.
say. Like the idea of Golden State's 2032 pick is a lot different to the 2026 pick. Like if we go back to Davis for an example, would I be willing to give up an unprotected 2032 pick for Anthony Davis? Probably not. No. Would I be more than willing to give up the 2026 pick? Yes. Like I would do that. So they're not created equal. There's obviously going to be protections and stuff on this. If you are after another center though, can I interest you? Would the Pelicans say, all right, we'll do it for two unprotected first. Let's say it's 2028 and 2032. But we'll take Buddy Hield
Mhm.
and you've got to take Kevon Looney because he's just like out of the rotation right now and you get to reunite. And that's almost like another extra bit of value for New Orleans. The fact they can like just get off the Looney contract because it's such a, like it's clearly a disaster for him. He's not playing whatsoever. I
Mhm.
don't think he'd play for it's like the Warriors don't need Kevon Looney, but if it's helps to get the Trey Murphy the third deal over the line, maybe kind of thing. I don't know. Is just on in regard to the center rotation, because if you add a guy like Anthony Davis or you add Nick Claxton, whoever else, would you be sending either Quinton Post, Al Horford, or Trace Jackson Davis out in the trade? Or would you roll with having four legitimate big men, I suppose, on your roster for the remainder of the season?
Well, with Anthony Davis, I think it's not just a preference to play the four. I think it's better that he starts at the four if we can. I don't think anybody wants Quinton Post as much as Warriors fans are worried that people want Quinton Post outside of the Bay. So if he was still hitting 40% from three, we call Dallas, they're like, yeah, and Quinton Post is in the trade. I don't think he's the breaking point of any exchange at the moment due to him bricking the majority of his shots, especially in second halves. Yeah, his
Mm.
second half shot metrics are awful. Um, Luckily, he won't be closing if we add Anthony Davis, but I think he should start next to him because at
Yeah.
least the spacing is still respected. And I
Yeah.
think that defensively, we've seen when in the very small amount of minutes we've seen next to Al Horford, often Al Horford's playing the five next to Quinton, kind of roaming at the four. So at least he feels comfortable enough and smart enough to find good spaces to occupy while the rim is being protected when he's not the sole big. Um, if it's Claxton, again, I don't think we'll start big, double big, but back to the Looney one. If if the only upgrade is Trey Murphy essentially stealing all of the Moody minutes, and we're closing with Draymond, and Looney is somehow Looney and Gary Payton are both finding fourth quarter minutes, Warriors are going to get knocked out in the play-in, let alone getting knocked out on some sort of 7-game series. So um, I don't mind Looney being exchanged and coming back if he was on a minimum contract, but the fact that he soaks up a significant part of the cap sheet that's pretty difficult to match for something else. I really think that the point is not how many centers, it's how many quality centers. The quality density. Yeah,
Yeah.
the talent density of our front court with Trace Jackson Davis and then a very limited Al Horford is just so low compared to any of the contenders. Like, Trace is cool. I've always been a Trace guy. The idea that we're going to go into a 7-game series and depend on him,
Mm.
that's just not a thing that's going to result in much success.
You've Yeah, I think what you've perfectly outlined, going back to the start was I don't think we understand how much having a legitimate interior big man that can impact both as a rim protector and providing some scoring inside. I don't think we give that enough credit in terms of how much the Warriors are missing that.
Mm.
Because I think right now, a lot of the discussion just goes towards the Warriors need a third scorer, which is absolutely true. And that's why Anthony Davis, I think, would be so good because he would give you that third scoring option, but he would also give you that interior. Like, they're the two big things to me. Interior scoring to some degree with interior shot blocking and rim protection, and also like third scorer. Because I don't know if you know this, but like Brandon Bajemski's the third leading scorer on this team at 12.1
I did
points per
not know
game.
that. That's fucking brutal.
12.1 points per game. I put it out on Twitter earlier that if Peyton Watson was on this team, Peyton Watson of the Denver Nuggets, who's known for his defense more than anything, if he was on this team, he'd be the third leading scorer for Golden State, which just makes you want to vomit in the mouth. Like, that's the need, I suppose, that Golden State are looking at, which is why Trey Murphy III, Michael Porter Jr. have been seriously mentioned. And then obviously AD gives you that extra element of the rim protection in inside scoring, which I think is really going under the radar in terms of what the Warriors are missing right now. Have we got anything
Just
else? It was really interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, go on.
just one more thing since we were talking about interior defense. I was double checking ranking.com for the metrics on our opponent's 2-point percentage right before it crashed my internet. Um, and so opponent's 2-point percentage. Now, obviously, that's not just the rim. Yeah, that's anything inside the perimeter, but primarily it's in the paint and at the rim. Top 4 teams in that percentage: OKC, Boston, Detroit, and the Knicks. That's the best team in the league and the 3 best Eastern Conference teams. Where's the Warriors rank? 27th, 52%. Our
Yeah.
opponents score 52. The team, not their center, score 52% within the perimeter.
Okay.
Like one thing that like is really misunderstood about people just like being so sensitive about the Draymond hate is nobody is hating on 2016 Draymond Green, one of the greatest players to ever play the game. My Substack is called Small Ball Solidified, very much because of him and guys like Bam Adebayo, who are often not looked at small ball players, but 6'9" players that in the 90s would have never been seen as a sole big going into the finals.
Yeah.
Being able to go small is a specialty item. It's something that not every team can do. So countering when a team goes small and then you counter going small, you can only do that if you have a player who's capable of doing it. So like every single team has a guy who's 6'7" and can kind of shoot the 3 and can kind of protect the rim. That doesn't mean he can give you 5 spot minutes at the 5 without just bleeding points at the basket. We saw that when we had Green. What was his name? I forgot his name. Green 2 years ago.
Oh,
The other
JaMychal.
Green. JaMychal Green. Do you remember the JaMychal Green center minutes? Oh my, every single time he went in and he played the sole big, it was just a layup line. And it wasn't the centers. It's not that he was just getting manhandled by 7-footers. It was just that every guard and wing was salivating, just going at him at the basket. Draymond Green is now not JaMychal Green, but the distance between the two is not far enough to be closing with them at the 5. 52%. We do not have an elite defense. We don't, and we have a shitty offense on top of it. We have Steph Curry winning games by himself. If he doesn't go pyrotechnics in 10 fourth quarters this year, imagine 10 fourth quarters where he was human. We'd be 5 games under 500. And we wouldn't
I,
even be talking about an upgrade.
I cannot believe we've dropped a Jermichael Green reference. The disrespect there, no, it's brutally honest. And I don't know, like the Jermichael Green, remember he like started a couple of games in the second round of the playoffs against the Lakers because like the Warriors were so desperate to find, like Steve Kerr was so desperate to find some spacing in the front court. Just hilarious. We've kind of spoke about what the Warriors could potentially look at in a Kuminga trade here. Do you like when do you think a trade happens here? Because we're just counting down the days till January 15. Monty Poole said on Dubs Talk earlier today that he thinks there's a 60%, he puts it a 60% chance that Kuminga will be, or there'll be a trade done involving Kuminga by January 20, which is the end of the 8-game homestand, which is about to start. It was really interesting to hear the Warriors plus minus guys as well mention how if they wait, because I was always the thought, well, wouldn't you just like wait a little bit just to see if something else comes up? Like the closer the deadline, teams become a little bit more desperate, and you wait and see and explore every possible option you could have. That was always kind of my thought. I thought, oh, maybe the Kuminga will actually be on the team for a couple of weeks after this January 15 date. But I think it was Kawakami and Danny Emmerman kind of mentioned how, well, the closer the wait, obviously they're desperate to get rid of Kuminga, right? They are desperate to move on from him. And the closer to the deadline, the more deals will just go away and will evaporate. And teams will be like, we know you're going to trade this guy, so why are we going to give up anything of value? Which is the case already, but at least at January 15, you can kind of try and drum up some kind of market and say, well, hang on, if you look at the reports, the Kings are interested, the Wizards are interested, the Pelicans are interested, the Mavericks have some interest, the Trailblazers reportedly have some interest. Like you can try and actually drum up some kind of bidding war. Do you have any expectation on what date you expect Kuminga to be traded?
I don't want to make any predictions about my expectations of if, like if it's going to happen before the 20th of January, but I would probably lean towards the earlier the better, mostly because I don't think it's going to take that long once he's actually available and it's not hypothetical. And when you call, it's not like, okay, cool, we had a little chat. Why don't you hit me up January 15, then we'll have the real chat. I think you called. So I was telling you before for Davis, when I'm building a trade, I don't usually make it from the Warriors' perspective. I identify a player I want, and then I pretend as if I'm the other franchise because I'm going to be biased from mine, right? If I'm Dallas, I need Pajemski in the trade, period. You don't want to give me Pajemski? I'll wait till the offseason. That's it.
Yeah.
That's how I would be because they need a point guard. Now, is he the point guard of their future? No, but they still have these dreams of Kyrie fitting and Pajemski somehow fits. Also, they got the white duo that they could put together with Cooper Flag and Pajemski in Texas. Like, that somebody in the front office likes that idea with that new Vegas ownership. But if we call and they go, it's Pajemski or no deal, if that's a breaking point for the Warriors, nothing's going to change in a month. Dallas isn't going to break off that's what they need. If Dallas says we need 2 unprotected first and a swap, and the Warriors aren't willing to do that, they'll know that January 15th. Same with Trey. You go to the Pelicans, they're like, oh, we want 3 firsts, unprotected. We want 28, 32, all the swaps in 26. Then you know you're not going to do it. So I think that finding out the value, I think there's only, in my opinion, there's just 3 trades available. There's the Trey Murphy trade, which I personally think they're going to ask too much, so I wouldn't emphasize that one. However, if 2 first-round picks is a possibility, long-term, he's definitely a better asset to pick up than Michael Porter Jr. I think the second is Michael Porter Jr. plus Claxton. And I think that that would probably cost 2 first-round picks, essentially one for each, seeing basically Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, Draymond Green, and Jonathan Kuminga as basically just matching salary. Moses Moody kicking in a little bit of value there. Everybody else kind of a wash, a non-negative, but a non-positive. And then the third being Anthony Davis, which I don't think it should be picked so much for Dallas. I think they would probably want Podziemski. But I don't know if they value Podziemski. They value Kuminga the way we value Davis. We're willing to get Davis at a discount, the way we got Butler at a discount. Well, they don't want Jonathan Kuminga at a premium. They want to get him as a throw-in.
Yeah. Yeah, they are the three moves I believe. But I also I'm being wary of going into this thinking the Warriors are going to get one of these three players because I just don't have any faith in the front office. I don't have any faith in Joe Lacob to be like, yeah, I'm throwing in the picks to get Trey Murphy or Michael Porter, or yeah, I'm throwing Draymond in to get Anthony Davis. Like, I've just got no faith in that whatsoever. So I'm also forcing myself to explore, okay, what's on the other end of this? What is going to be something that could happen that we're not necessarily going to be happy with? Because unfortunately, I think that's a legitimate chance of happening. Now, I think there's a chance they could get one of the three guys. I think there is. But I also think there's a genuine chance they do something that just does not move the needle whatsoever.
I think it's Claxton. I think that's like it's one. You could just throw Kuminga and Buddy Hield. We even save money on the deal, and then he descends. So I think that that's probably the deal, that we get a front court player. He doesn't really fit next to not only Draymond but Butler, but that seems like the Band-Aid move. We get a center, next to him.
But it would have to be a 3-team deal, I'm assuming, where because the Nets they aren't a team that have interest in Kuminga. So maybe it's like, I don't know, Kuminga goes to the Kings or something, and they throw Malik Monk and a pick at the Nets for Nick Claxton.
I don't know so much that the Nets are just opposed to Jonathan Kuminga. They didn't want to use their salary space for Kuminga. Now, if they can essentially because in a trade where we're sending a pick or two, I don't think they would send 2 picks for Claxton, but if they got 1 unprotected first for Claxton and Jonathan Kuminga, now basically they're like, okay, we got a bunch of young guys, and Michael Porter Jr. fits perfect next to Kuminga because he's going to be the gunslinger. You got all these ball handlers. Let's try him out through the end of the season. If he's a problem, you let him go. If not, he's an expiring contract next year. So I don't see them seeing him as an impossibility to take on. But you're right. There's a bunch of teams that are willing to send stuff. I don't expect any good stuff, but stuff to facilitate the trade.
Yeah. The other aspect, I suppose, to this, I saw Kevin O'Connor. We can buy into this as much as you want, I suppose, but Kevin O'Connor reported yesterday that the Trailblazers have interest, and if it came down to it on deadline day and the Warriors are sitting around and they've still got Jonathan Kuminga, it's like, would you do Kuminga and Buddy Hield for Jeremy Grant, no picks involved? I mentioned this on a Patreon episode earlier. I don't love Jeremy Grant whatsoever. I don't love the contract, but is it something that you should, if you decide I cannot give up all these picks for Trey Murphy or Michael Porter, I cannot give up Draymond for Anthony Davis. If you've got nothing else, then I think Jeremy Grant is not ideal, but he's also not someone the Warriors could just immediately say no to, because he can give you 16 to 18 points. He's a big body at the 4 position, 6'7", 6'8". I don't know. I don't love it, but it's kind of the deal. I'm preparing for. I'm like, is there a chance that they go out and get Jeremy Grant, and that it doesn't cost them anything, and it's not making them a contender, but is it a rotation piece that could make them a little bit better? Yeah, it could.
Do you remember how many years he has left on his contract? I don't really want to look it up at this point.
I think it's 2 beyond this one, which
Jesus. Okay.
If you're the Warriors and you're looking to create salary room for 2027.
Yeah, I'm not concerned with that. Just in general, the asset. What he is. Unfortunately, on paper, for those who just did not watch the terrible Detroit Pistons when he was there, or watching the Trailblazers outside of when they match up against the Warriors. Like, the Nuggets version of Jeremy Grant would be a fantastic add to the team. Unfortunately, him getting the ball whenever he wanted in Detroit poisoned the well. Like, if you just hit the highlights, you're like, oh, he's a spot up shooter and he's got size and he's a decent defender. But man, that guy really loves his handle and thinks that he is a poor man's Kevin Durant, and he is a poor man's Brandon Ingram, not a
No,
poor
you
man's
know what
Kevin
he
Durant.
actually is? You know what he actually is? A slightly rich man's version of Jonathan Kuminga. Like,
Yeah.
that's what he is. He's like a slightly more veteran, better version of Jonathan Kuminga. Like, that's like, could Kuminga go and do what like Grant has done
Mm,
with another team and like put up 20 points a game? Yeah,
probably.
probably. Like,
And if
that's
it, but to be fair, if I'm the Trailblazers and you call me and you offer Jonathan Kuminga for Jeremy Grant, I absolutely pull the trigger on that deal without a doubt. But I don't think anybody's trading for Jeremy Grant unless the Trailblazers they have to attach something else of value, whether it's one of their other young players or some sort of pick. I don't think he has any plus value on the market as much as everybody thinks, just because Jonathan's not playing, that he has negative value now, or that everybody keeps saying that his value is going down. The other 29 teams before this season started had an idea in their head what Jonathan is or isn't.
yeah.
Yeah, with all the caveats of Kerr in the system. Now, it went up slightly in the first 5 games, and then it came back exactly where it was. It has not gone down. It doesn't go down. It hasn't gone up, and it's not very high. That's why they're not going to get any pick. There's no world they get a pick for Jonathan Kuminga, but they could get role players for Jonathan Kuminga and young ones, because all the teams that want him are rebuilding teams. They all have their own Moses Moody's and Jonathan Kumingas of players that they used to be in love with and no longer are.
They could get a pick if they're willing to take on a bad contract. Like, if they like, the
Can you give
Kings
me
will
the
offer.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, the Kings will offer a first round pick with Malik Monk. They did it in the offseason. They'll do it again. Like, they'll offer. It'll probably have some kind of protection on it. But like, and
Okay.
that's not a good. I'm not saying it's a good deal. I'm not
No,
saying the
you're
Warriors
right.
should do
You're
it.
right.
But yeah, that is if you can.
Can you
The issue
imagine the
now is
nightmare of being Malik Monk and getting the call that you have to go play for Steve Kerr, probably the guy that values the least in all 30 franchise? Like, yeah, you're gonna be playing behind Pat Spencer.
I don't know, man. He's a guard. He'll find minutes. He'll find minutes in this Steve Kerr rotation.
Do you have any other trades besides that? It's interesting you bring up Jeremy Grant, because that's like, he is an upgrade. Now, obviously, you'd like to have an additional upgrade next to him, but like, is there any other guys outside of him that you've like pondered just like playing around with it? I'm curious.
I don't think so. No, not of
I'd
not
like
of
to
teams
bring.
that are like the teams that are like interested. If you go through them, so Drew Holiday, like, prototypical Warrior player, but at this stage of his career on that contract, you're just not doing it. Like, I think I'd take
Washed.
Grant over Holiday, as
Yeah,
much
me
as
too.
that sounds weird. Um,
It sounds ridiculous, but
it
yeah.
sounds ridiculous, but that's kind of what it is. And then, do the Wizards have anything? I'm just
No.
not sure they have anything like, yeah, like,
They
it
have
sounds
they
like
have
they're gonna get
names on
Trey.
the backs of jerseys that used to be of value, and I don't know
Yeah,
which team is going to talk themselves into a Russell Westbrook style acquisition, but
yeah.
yeah, like Daniel
Uh,
Gafford was a name that you brought up earlier and people often bring up. I've been seeing a lot more of him scouting out Anthony Davis, and Daniel Gafford is not the upgrade we need. Like
nah,
he
not enough maker.
he played very big next to Luka Doncic with all that gravity, and he was a really, like, he should get shipped back to LA because that is the pairing. Somehow they unlock something within each other. But as
Yeah.
just a center, he's not the rim protector that we need, and he's not the scorer we need in any capacity, not even for spot 20 minutes of some sort. Like, he's not a big enough upgrade to Trace Jackson Davis, unfortunately.
I'm just trying to go with, like, the Kings obviously is like, they have interest. Like DeRozan, no thanks.
Yeah,
Uh,
people bring this up DeRozan. I feel like it's just like just not watching the Kings to see that like we might be worse by just adding DeRozan, even if we got him for free. Like, I don't understand the acquisition being an upgrade.
Yeah,
Like, I'd rather any of our guards who play two-way,
yeah,
even hypothetically, I'd rather have them.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Chicago, do they have anybody that is of interest to you? Because I don't see anybody on that
Kobe
roster
White,
when I
but
watch them. Go ahead.
yeah, like Kobe White, but like even then, I'm not sold on him and his winning impact. I
Hmm.
suppose he's been fairly inefficient this season. Again, another guard. The Warriors don't need another guard necessarily. Uh, what if you piled? I'm just thinking of the salaries on top of my head. I'm not even
Yep.
sure if it works. Kuminga at 22.5, Moody at like 11, Buddy Hield.
9.
What if you did Kuminga, Hield, Moody, and when we're getting to 4 players, that's a lot. Kuminga, Moody, Hield, Al Horford for DeMontis Sabonis and Keon Ellis. And then you might have just enough money left over to go sign a guy in free agency.
I just vomited a little bit in my mouth. Yeah, like
I don't know. I'm just
I no, but I'd rather do it than nothing, I suppose. But then it's just like we talked about this before when we brought up Sabonis. I was really high on Sabonis at the end of last year in a way that I hadn't been because I felt like his rim protection had become adequate for such an
yeah,
offensive powerhouse. But in the limited minutes that I saw him before he got injured this year,
yeah.
offensively, I don't know if it's the team because they have no spacing around him and what is there to play for. And
Yeah.
maybe he came into the season hampered, and that's what ended up him getting so significantly injured. But man, he didn't even look like a player that can get traded for plus value the way he was scoring, let alone him not able to play any defensive position. So, yeah, it's
It
scary.
it's a bit of a shame that Keegan Murray has the poison pill contract because his value
Mm.
with both the way he's played, which has been terrible, can't hit anything, and also his injury concerns that he's now got, he's kind of come back to the pack in terms of could you go and get him for like an added first round pick with Kuminga?
Yeah, the
Poison pill
change of
contract means
scenery
that
for
can't.
both of them, yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like Keegan Murray, like people are down on him now, but I feel like there's still a case of you could wipe some of just the Sacramento shit that is just covered on Keegan Murray kind of thing. You could kind of turn that into a gemstone of some kind. Unfortunately, again, the poison pill contract means it can't happen. I don't know. You
I think
got
that
anyone else
No, I
trying
think we
to?
just ran into the end of the wall because we're scraping the bottom of the barrel of the Sacramento Kings, and that means that we've gone through all the
We're
corners
done.
of the association.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be like surely. I'm just thinking. I wonder if there's a name out there that no one, like literally no one, has mentioned that could end up actually being it. Like, you've just got no idea about at this point, but something's going on behind the scenes. I know, wait and see. Those on YouTube, if you're tuning in, let us know in the comments. Is there anyone we haven't mentioned, anyone you haven't really heard on any kind of major media outlet that you think the Warriors could potentially pull a trade for? Stevie, thanks very much again for joining me. Let's do it in maybe another week's time as we get into the last day or two before Kuminga becomes trade eligible, because I'm sure there'll be plenty of news and rumors and stuff floating around.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, man. Peace out.